History remembers victories, but heaven remembers faith. Before a giant fell, a shepherd chose to trust God. History remembers the stone, but the story didn't begin in the valley. Long before a nation knew his name, he was simply a shepherd. Before he protected a nation, he faithfully watched over his father's sheep. David, the youngest son of Jesse, spent his days where few were watching. But God was. The hands that would one day lead a kingdom first learned to care for the smallest of the flock. Before he lifted a sling, he lifted songs of praise to the Lord. In these quiet hills, David learned to see the hand of God in everything he had made. While no one else was listening, the Lord was preparing the heart of a shepherd. Then, on an ordinary morning, everything began to change. The call of his father would soon lead him to the purpose God had already prepared. Jesse called his youngest son. What seemed like an ordinary errand was the first step toward an extraordinary purpose. With bread on his shoulder and obedience in his heart, David began the journey. With every step away from Bethlehem, David walked closer to the purpose God had prepared for him. The road before him seemed ordinary, but every step was guided by the hand of God. At last, David reached the Valley of Elah, unaware that his name was about to be remembered for generations. David entered the camp as one among many, unnoticed by men, yet already known by God. At last, he found his brothers, and for one brief moment, there was peace. Then the trumpet sounded, and the camp fell silent. For 40 days, this had become their routine. Day after day, Israel took its place on the hillside, waiting for a battle that never came. Then their champion stepped forward, and every eye turned toward him. For 40 days, this voice had silenced an entire nation. Morning after morning, Goliath challenged Israel, and no one answered. The giant's words filled the valley, and fear filled every heart but one. While others saw a giant, David saw a question that demanded an answer. Even his own brother could not see what God already had. To every eye, he was only a shepherd, but God had been preparing him long before this day. David's confidence was not in his own strength, but in the God who had never failed him. The king offered the strength he understood, but David trusted in another kind of armor. Victory would not come through borrowed strength, but through unwavering faith. He laid aside the armor of men and carried only what faith required. With 5 smooth stones and unshakable faith, David walked toward the impossible. He did not walk toward a giant. He walked with the God who had always been with him. Before the world knew his name, God already knew his heart. Long before this day, faith was being forged in places no one else could see. For 40 days, one voice had silenced an entire nation. Morning after morning, evening after evening, no one stepped forward. Yet one heart remained untouched because it trusted in the living God. While others saw a giant, David saw the faithfulness of God. His strength was never in the sling, but in the Lord who guided his hand. Every challenge demanded a champion, but only one man trusted the Lord enough to answer. One man advanced in the strength of armor, the other stood in the strength of the Lord. Faith moved first, and everything changed. History remembers the stone. In a single moment, 40 days of fear came crashing to the ground. Courage spread through Israel because one shepherd chose faith over fear. And when the valley grew quiet, only one truth remained.